Artificial intelligence is remaking marketing as we speak, and if you're a marketer, you can either get up to speed or get left behind. The choice is yours, and really, it's a no-brainer. Join Geoff Livingston and Greg Verdino as they explore the latest AI news, trends, tools, and ideas that are creating the future of marketing today. This is No Brainer, an AI podcast for marketers. Oh, and just in case you're wondering, yes, I am an AI. Take it away, Geoff and Greg.
Hey, this is Greg Verdino, and you are tuned into No Brainer, an AI podcast for marketers. And I am here, as always, with my good friend, my avatar twin, Geoff Livingston. How are you today, Geoff?
Good to see you, my friend. How are you? I see you have the same haircut as me again.
As always, absolutely. And speaking of haircuts, we've got an actual haircut with us today. A very special guest, our old, not too old, but old friend, Jeremiah Owyang. How are you today, Jeremiah?
Hey, guys. It's nice to reconnect.
Hey, Jeremiah. How are you, man? Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, it's good to have you on board. And Jeremiah is here because we've got a special episode this week. This is actually our year-end episode. We're going to take a couple of weeks off around the holidays. And the last episode, as anyone who's been listening knows, Geoff and I took a look back at 2023 and ran through some of the things that we found notable about the year in AI. This year, we're going to take a look ahead, and we're going to be making some, I hesitate to call them predictions, but we're going to, I guess, place some bets on some of the things that we expect or hope to see happen in the coming year, 2024. And we know, obviously, Jeremiah, you have been an analyst for many, many years. You're an investor, an entrepreneur. You are eyeballs deep in artificial intelligence, as I'm sure anybody who knows you is well aware. And we're really excited to hear what you've got to say. So let's kick off. What we're going to do on this episode for everybody, just to give you a little bit of orientation, is each of us brought three trends or topics to the table. We're going to round robin the same way we did last episode. We're going to start with you, Jeremiah. What's the first thing that you have on your radar for 2024?
And by the way, I do have the clock.
Uh-oh,
Okay.
He's timing you.
All right. Well, you tell me when we're up against the clock. So, speaking of clocks, people don't have a lot of time, and AI is going to create more content. There's more content to read. I don't know how many unread emails you have. So what I'm imagining happening is we're all going to have inbox zero. What? That's because AI is going to read our email, prioritize our email, summarize our email, and start responding for us. And that's actually the first place where AI should start, because there's already a wealth of information it can train on. The thousands of emails you've received and sent, how did you respond? And that sets up this new wave of AI agents that will start to emulate us. Now, if you're a marketer, you should probably be concerned. It means that humans aren't going to be reading your email marketing. The AI is going to do it and be making recommendations and even product recommendations for the buyer. So that's what I see happening. AI agents in email is going to radically change the game. Many of us can have inbox zero if we want it.
Wow. That'd be pretty awesome. I hate doing it manually. I don't know. What do you think, Greg?
Yeah, I know. I mean, obviously, that's a great opportunity. What I like about it is for the consumer, the average individual, it's such a practical application of the technology. There's a clear benefit, a clear use case there. What obviously scares me as a marketer is the very thing that you hit on, Jeremiah, right? That, as we approach an age, and I don't believe this will happen outright in 2024, but I know you and I have spoken a bit online about this. As we approach an age where effectively we have an agent acting on our behalf in virtually every area, so machines are marketing to machines effectively.
Yes.
That fundamentally changes everything about marketing, right? All of the old rules go out of, really are off the table at that point.
Yeah, I mean, it's also something that makes sense to me. I mean, do you see Google as the primary deliverer of that with Gmail?
Yeah, Google, but also this is already a feature that's been announced in Microsoft 365 Copilot. As you know, they partner deeply with OpenAI, so it's going to come out of there for the Office side as well.
I mean, that makes sense. With Exchange and Gmail, then you have like the twin giants of email hitting it. So to me, I mean, that makes a lot of sense, and it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
I do think that that's going to actually really destroy, in a lot of ways, like you had just mentioned, Greg, the direct marketing industry, because email's already bad, getting worse each year with all the filtering that's going on. Now it's just basically disarm it completely.
What about, I guess the other angle here is, what are your thoughts, Jeremiah? Clearly people already, I think a lot of people are already feeling disconnected, right? There's a loneliness epidemic. There's, I think, concern about the way in which sort of digital mediation has disintermediated our relationships with other human beings. There's potentially an authenticity crisis coming as more and more content is AI generated. How do you think this plays into that?
Well, it's a multi-pronged answer, but I think we're going to see a way for people to prove their humanity when they post. Like there might be some bioauthentication that indicates that this post was written by Geoff Livingston, therefore I'm more likely to read it. I don't know exactly how that's
less likely.
Yes.
There might be some retinal scan or something, or a video that shows that it's not been altered, right? Those are things that we might see happen. Secondly, people are going to be talking to AI when they're lonely. I'm not saying that, by the way, this is the best thing for the world. I'm just saying it's going to be a thing. There's just not enough therapists. There's not enough healthcare professionals. Anxiety, depression is at an all-time high. Most boomers are moving into
service reps,
their aging years, and they need someone in loneliness. So people are going to talk to AI. In fact, there's one called Pi by Inflection AI that does some of these things. I have a financial tie to that company, but I showed Geoff that example. So
I knew who I was, Greg, which is sad for Pi.
Well, we got each other, guys.
This is true. Yeah, and I think, you also hit on something there, and then we'll move on. But, you made the point that you're not saying whether this is good or bad for the world, right? But it just is. And I think that's an important thing for people to keep in mind, that ultimately any of these applications, these use cases, these technologies can be either good or bad, anywhere in between, and sometimes both all at once, and that it's ultimately our responsibility as users, as consumers of the technology, as businesses who might deploy the technology, to really kind of think this through and decide for ourselves, is this a good thing, is this a bad thing, and then obviously shape the way we behave and adopt these technologies on the basis of that. But we can't ignore the fact that these technologies are entering our lives rapidly at a clip, unlike really anything else that we've seen in recent memory, right? Absolutely, and you can't ignore it. I think I'm up next, if I remember Geoff's, I'm going on a totally different track here, although, I suppose all of this does come together in a way somehow. So when I look at, and this is not a positive thing, this is definitely a negative thing, I guess maybe it has a positive implication at the end of the day, but when I look at 2024, to me, I don't see how we don't have an AI startup bloodbath. And what I mean by that is, when we look back at the frenzy over the course of the past year or so, we've seen thousands upon thousands of AI startups, many of which are just thin wrappers around GPT or another model that add very little additional value beyond a basic application like a ChatGPT. It's like, oh, it's ChatGPT, but it only talks about balloons. And companies like that were frankly getting insane investment in a lot of cases. And I'm being a little bit facetious about the balloons, but it was almost that bad. Like, there are dozens and dozens of different applications that, will write your emails or your blog posts for you at this point. None is any better than any of the others in a lot of cases. So there's a lot, it's a very crowded marketplace, a lot of really, I think, products, not companies, that have been funded, that are out in the market. I know I've seen some data from Sequoia, for example, that seems to indicate that a lot of these companies have yet to actually prove their value and, really kind of clearly define their value proposition and their use cases and benefits to the prospective users, right? So I think there are a lot of companies who are going to, quite frankly, disappear over the course of 2024. I frankly wouldn't be surprised if at least one of those is a major player. I'm not prepared to make a bet on who that major player would be necessarily, but I wouldn't be surprised if a major player disappears, but certainly...
Does it rhyme with Casper?
It may or may not. But I mean, it could even be one of the companies that are building foundation models, right? Whether they flat out go out of business or they get acquired by somebody else, who knows, right? So it could really, as far as I'm concerned, be anybody. But at the end of the day, for me, the bottom line is the marketplace is going to significantly consolidate. And we're going to see a lot of these smaller, thin wrapper companies in particular just fall out of the space.
You want to take that one first, Jeremiah?
Well, I think that's right, and I probably would welcome that first. So for those that don't know, I have a new role. I'm a venture capitalist. I joined a firm, so I'm investing in these startups, and God, there's so many. All right, so here's a crazy stat. Geoff's head is glowing again. So a crazy stat. When I started tracking the website, there's an AI for that.com in March. There was 3,000 companies in the directory. A few weeks ago, it crossed 10,000.
10,000, right?
Right.
Yeah, so that means there's about 1,000 new AI projects being added to the database per month. By the way, that's 30 a day. So since we started talking, a new one's birthed. That's really impossible for us to do that. Look, there's one birthing right now.
That's Greg's timer. He made it.
I did it. Yes.
Yeah. So Greg's right, and the market needs to retract.
Yeah. I mean, to me, the red ocean makes sense, right? We're going to definitely see that. There's way too many of them. We all remember what it was like last spring. Anytime anybody announced anything, it was like, oh my God, HubSpot's got AI. But then you look at it, it's like, well, no, they just slapped GPT on it.
They rubbed some on.
They're called a chat spot or whatever it's called, a bad spot, And this is, I'm not demeaning HubSpot. This is common. And it's been done by established players and new players alike. But I think the market's gotten wise to it very quickly, and everybody's skeptical now. It's like, okay, is this really adding value? How is this different than what I can get already through my app that I already pay for versus, you just channeling my web traffic and then gathering all the data on me or, basically trying to keep me on your app, HubSpot.
Yeah, it's like all these enterprise software companies that added Facebook Connect or LinkedIn Connect, and all of a sudden they're social media companies 10 years ago.
Right. It's like a comment box, right? So what?
Yeah, comment box, exactly. So, I mean, but they feel the pressure from Wall Street to do something.
Of course.
The CEOs are like, it's being mentioned in the boardroom and the annual.
But what's interesting too, though, is I think we've also seen the path to do that, which is to do it well. Like, for example, Amazon taking generative AI to either whether it's DALL-E or I think they use Stable, but using Stable to create imagery for their ads, for their storefront ads, and basically customizing the prompts so that a storefront user can resize ads, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Very niche, specific, defined use cases for their application. Like, that's how to use it, right? Not to just slap it on. So
I agree with that. So two things that we're looking for to ensure they're not a GPT wrapper. One, do they have access to exclusive data? And that is something that is, if it's a legal contract, that's very defensible. And then secondly, are they creating new products with synthetic data? So that point you just brought up, Geoff, around creating new ads with synthetic data, that fits well into that.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. That's really great to get that VC perspective too, because you're not going to invest unless you see value.
Yep.
All right, I think it's my turn. My number one trend, which is only the third trend, and so all jokes aside, I mean, we've been talking about multimodal quite a bit over the past few months, and I think we've all seen this in the past with social and 2.0 when we saw text meets video meets imagery, and then it became VR, AR, and the metaverse and everything. But the reality is that the consumer market is trained now to expect diverse media types, not just to input it, but also to receive it. And I think the generative AI rush is moving towards that multimodal, not just import, but also export. And as we get there, and somebody I expect next year is going to have a breakthrough, probably OpenAI, maybe Google, maybe one of the others like Anthropic, whatever it might be, Metaverse, Facebook, whatever they've channeled all their algorithms into to try to recycle them. But that's just a joke, Jeremiah. Sorry, I'm just snarky as all hell. I can't help myself. But the thing is like, somebody's going to have a breakthrough. And when that happens, and people realize what is possible, one, it devalues, I think, LLMs to a great extent because they're primarily trading, or simple LLMs are primarily trading off of text. And it really forces everybody to up the game and meet this new market, because once people get access to the type of content that they're already consuming on every social network out there via an AI, they're going to want it. And so I think you're going to see all the players that are behind quickly get into an acquisition frenzy. So, for example, let's say OpenAI is the one that's behind, and they realize that DALL-E is not going to successfully meet their need to generate imagery. They may acquire Midjourney. Or I could see Amazon quickly pairing Anthropic and Stable and saying, guess what, boys, we're buying you both and we're mashing you up pretty nicely. Stuff like that. I just see an acquisition frenzy to try to meet this multimodal market need.
That makes sense. And then the other types of modes, so we got text, we got audio, we got voices, we got video. Like Pika looks amazing. That looks like one that would be acquired, right? By, I don't know, Adobe? Adobe should acquire Pika. Or whoever wants to take down Adobe acquires Pika, right?
Right.
Or what if it goes to Netflix? Wild. Or YouTube, right? Google. Like, there's some wild thoughts. So I think that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also then, in addition to that, was the other modes would be instantly generate video games and instantly generate metaverse experiences.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think even before we get into that stuff, which is kind of on the horizon, and we're talking about the horizon, but like I think back to the early days of social and what a pain in the ass everything was, right?
Oh, it was horrible.
Your friends were on MySpace and you were blogging on Blogger.
Your friends were on MySpace?
Well, you know what I'm saying, not me, hypothetically.
No, yeah, you.
Right? Yeah, it was me. It was me. I was Dusty Onion 74.
You're just getting over Friendster.
And right, but like you would have but I'm saying like you'd have your community on MySpace, you'd have your blog on Blogger, you'd be commenting on crap on like Dig or sharing links on Dig and Reddit, and like all this, like everything was Flickr photos, and you were like just scattered all over the place, and it took kind of a Facebook, for good, bad, or otherwise, to say, no, you can do it all here. And it became so much simpler. It drove adoption in a way that the sort of more sort of scattered and disparate environment didn't. It got marketers on board because all of a sudden you knew who to go to for your 800-pound guerrilla ad spend, all that kind of stuff. In a way, there's sort of a parallel here, right? In that, if you want to create text, you go to one tool. If you want your images, you go to a different tool. If you need video, you go to a third tool. If you want to put a little bit of code in, you have to go to a fourth tool, right? And it's really kind of a pain in the butt. It's almost in a lot of ways even the way Web3 was a pain in the butt, right? Where everything was kind of taped and band-aided together.
It's early, right?
Right.
Yes.
And a lot of this is, as these models come together, become truly multimodal, both in terms of input and outputs, it becomes a much more natural way to have a single interface and a single way of interacting with the machine without having to, bop around and hunt and peck and worry about knowing and learning and maintaining and paying for 17 different tools.
Yeah.
So that's
Makes
good.
sense.
Suites. So
All
Gen
right.
AI Suites is really what it is. Yeah. I think
Yeah.
we'll see that happen for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome.
We,
All right.
We saw that on Facebook. Okay, next
Yeah.
round.
Jeremiah.
Second round.
Oh, yeah. So my next prediction is that I think we'll see Google search, that dominant winner of the last 20 years that's dominated everything, and certainly marketers have put a bunch of money into that. You know, search, the SERP, SEO. I think Google is going to lose market share. Wow.
I would actually argue that they already are losing market share.
Oh, snap. What are you seeing, Geoff?
Well, TikTok. You know, I see that you have that whole generation's already searching on TikTok. Gen Z is already out there, and you can see that with YouTube also losing market share, which, you know, of course gets bundled into Google search. So
It's true.
I think you're
Good
spot
news
on,
there.
but you know, they could say the thing that Google gets away with their search stats, which I think allows them to kind of come across as monolithic, even though that they may have lost market. It's like saying we have so many cable subscribers to broadcast without counting all the cord cutters, right? Percentage-wise. And so I think Google's got a dominant share of search in a traditional sense. I do agree, though, that moving to your point with AI, AI suddenly becomes that cord-cutting mechanism, where instead of traditional social networks or search or whatever, it's going to move to the bots. Right.
So it's already happened for me. So Google search is the second tool. It's my backup tool. So the first tool I use to get information from the real-time web is is a search tool called Perplexity AI. You guys have tried it, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I don't have any. I will disclose when I have a financial relationship. But Perplexity is really interesting. So you can type in anything, any question you would have that you would normally put into Google. So let's say how to bake sourdough bread, since that was like the big thing a few years ago. It would give you everything you need on all those recipes, but it would summarize it. It does summarize it in one location, and it also references and gives the citations of where it got that information, and you can click those links to find out the original source. And here's the best part: there's no ads. So you don't have to make choices like going to a search results page, figure that out, which by the way is very disrespectful.
That's very complicated now.
Yeah, it's very like Google's kind of like a, I don't know, the best term for it is it's like held us hostage, or it's been kind of like a bad relationship, like an abrasive relationship, abusive relationship, right? Like they know the answer, they just don't want to give it to us because they make money. So that's going to be upended from tools like Perplexity, but also OpenAI and Claude and Pi and any other AI tool. Google is quite capable of doing this. You can see like the Google Bard features, the beta features have this capability.
Right.
The issue is over 95% of the revenue is ads. So it's a business model conflict. How are they going to do this? I don't know.
Slowly die?
Yep, so that's my prediction. Google search is going to lose market share to generative AI tools.
Hey, real quick before we move off of this, what did you think of Gemini? Thumbs up, thumbs down?
So I thought it was interesting. I saw the video, but there was a lot of people saying that that's not reality. It's just fabricated.
Yeah.
So
I could do one of those on Fiverr too, you know.
So I wait till I can try the tools before I give a verdict on that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they have a history of, I won't say outright fabricating their demos, but certainly doctoring their demos to amplify, I think, the narrative around the capabilities that might be in the roadmap, let's say, as opposed to what the tool is actually capable of doing right now. So, yeah, we'll see how that pans out and whether...
They have their backs against the walls. They have no choice now.
They have no
It is do
choice,
or die.
right? They're
the first ones to acquire too. We'll see.
That makes sense as well.
Yeah, they have to.
Absolutely. Want to move on, Geoff? What's your number 2?
Well, I think we kind of saw this unfold a little bit over Thanksgiving, but I would say that OpenAI is ripe for a fall, in a way, a self-induced fall. And I'm not saying that they're going to implode or disappear off the market, but I could see them losing market share pretty heavily due to a self-induced black eye. What I've seen from OpenAI more than anything in Altman during his leadership, he really likes to be in the spotlight. He'll say bombastic things. He'll do things like even embarrass Satya Nadella in public during his very crazy kind of, I don't even know what to call that, coup that occurred at OpenAI over Thanksgiving. And, you know, that was just the way that unfolded in the public was, to me, an example of kind of like Kyrie Irving type behavior where you just don't know what's going to happen with this guy or what he's going to say or when he's going to go out on X. And I know that there's this bombastic CEO kind of mode, but that combined with OpenAI's kind of wishy-washy approach to ethics and some of the trouble they've already gotten into with lawsuits, I just see something happening next year where they trip themselves up. They just seem to play down to the competition and stop themselves from dominating the way they should, and I just foresee that continuing and in some bad way. Yeah.
I think that, certainly one thing to me is certain, that we haven't seen the last ripple from that week of chaos, right? I don't think we've seen the last of the management switch-ups. I don't think we've seen the last of the chaos, the last wrinkle, the last, kind of surprising development, or even potentially, sort of the not the release, but the sort of the leak or the public recognition of some fact that has been unknown about some of what happened there. I'm not going to pretend to know any of the details about the inner workings, just like you, everything I've read, right? Whether it's Kara Swisher or The Information or, anybody else who's been reporting on it. But I do think, a large public shakeup like that certainly is going to have continued effects. I think it also shakes the confidence of the market. So anybody who has done a large-scale strategic deal with a company that has that kind of a public blowout has to be scratching their heads and saying, did we make the right choice here? Or if we're about to enter into a large strategic relationship, are we making the right choice, and should we be considering other options?
So I think oh, please.
Go ahead.
So I think because of that, all of that is true, that Microsoft now, who they're going to be putting one of their execs on the board, is going to have their thumb on Sam's shoulder at all times. And they're going to be watching carefully. And this could actually result in reduced innovation and fewer risks to be had. They may have a culture more like Microsoft in a year from now, which in a way could lead you to that blowout, Geoff, that you were talking about. I don't think they're going to have like an implosion like they did before. I think they're going to have corporate scrutiny now.
Okay.
But they could slow down. That's what could happen.
I think, a Nadella type culture at OpenAI would be very beneficial to that company, actually. Kind of smooth out some of the wonkiness that you see in startups, which sometimes is very beneficial and sometimes can be explosive.
Yeah, I wonder though, to what extent would that cause them to potentially lose an edge, not the edge, right? They would, I think, gain a different kind of edge. To your point, Jeremiah, would it slow down their pace of innovation, for example? Certainly it would have the balancing effect of making the organization at least appear to be more trustworthy to a large enterprise buyer, right? It's the Microsoft, stamp of approval, so to speak. I also wonder, is it, and I know they've been around for a while, but as a commercial entity, I wonder, is it too early in their life cycle to have more of a large company approach? Do they need that startup chaos in a way to retain their edge and their sort of
creative combustion, right?
Yeah. I mean, they're ahead of the competitors, so it's their lead to lose. But if they're ahead, they need to show safety now. I think that's the issue.
Yeah, yeah, they're
that was
very
a pretty big blow up. I mean, that if I was in IT at an enterprise, or if I was running digital marketing enterprise, I would push pause on that contract indefinitely, until that is resolved. So
right, that was my point. If nothing else, it's going to cause those large enterprises to go, whoa, wait a second.
Yeah,
and at a minimum, make sure they have a plan B, and at a maximum, choose the plan B as their new plan A, right?
Yeah.
Greg,
All right.
you're up.
We want to
Number
roll
2.
on. Again, I'm going to kind of pivot a little bit here into something different. We're talking obviously about an OpenAI, the king of large language models, and then some. And all of the focus over the course of the past year certainly has been around large language models. I think we are going to see not a full-on switch over, but I think the rise of what I would call specialized language models. I don't want to call them small language models. They're still quite large. But I think increasingly, at least what I'm seeing, is enterprises are looking for a way to deploy more focused models that may not be as good at everything as a GPT-4 Turbo might be, but are really, really, really hella good at the one thing they need that model to do. And that this in particular is going to come to play in things like regulated industries or industries where the nature of their proprietary data is really a huge differentiator and an advantage for them, and to really train up those specialized models and make sure that they are super fine-tuned to performing the tasks they need to perform really well.
I saw a buzzword emerge called large image models or large visual models, where, it's large visual models, I think, where it's training off enterprise images. So that's a trend. And for example, a law firm, mortgage company, any company with a bunch of documents, you could train off all those images. Insurance companies, and then it can more accurately predict what's in those images related to that market. So that's a trend that I am expecting to see, and we're going to look at that category for investment as well.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and I talked to quite a few trade associations actually in DC, which makes sense, right? And a lot of them are interested in that. They want to see industry-specific types of large language models where it's proprietary, locked down. They're not sharing that data with other people, and they become the sources of information as the let's say the Generative AI Association or whatever it might be, right?
So it's proprietary data in that scenario, right? It's the secret sauce of that association, the training materials, the educational materials, the protocols, the prototypes, the whatever. But it's also, like in a scenario like that, you don't need a chatbot that's equally good at writing an email, searching a database, speaking in pirate, right? You need you need an AI system that is really, really good at unearthing the hidden patterns and the gems inside that proprietary database. So it's a very different approach, and you don't need as large a model. It might benefit from being built on top of a foundational model, just in terms of the natural language processing and whatnot, but it is obviously much more focused and specialized and easier and cheaper, frankly, for an organization like an association to manage over time than if they were to try to build something much larger, I think.
Right, like I saw one last week. It was called Sifa AI, it looked like they were doing a very refined, trained implementation of a GPT, but I'm not sure they're using that LLM. But it was all CFP, financial planning related data and jargon built on the regulations of that sector. Yeah. Now, if you're a certified financial professional, I mean, there may be 100,000 in the country, but it's a very defined, specific profession, which is revenue oriented. That gives them, SIFA, the right to go to a Wells Fargo or a Vanguard or whoever and say, we have this specialized enterprise edition of this, and you need to pay for it.
Absolutely. Makes a lot of sense. All right, because I'm going to forget to do it, as we've forgotten on every episode for the past several weeks. We're going to take a short break right now, hear from a couple of our sponsors, and we will be back in just a couple of minutes with our 7th, 8th, and 9th trends for 2020. Hey, welcome back, everybody. We are in the midst of our 2024 trends, predictions, prognostications edition of No Brainer. We've got 3 more to go. I'm going to serve myself up first. And for this one, I'm going to go right at the marketers. And for me, it's sort of it's almost like an anti-trend. I think that the age of aimless experimentation is over. As we go into 2024, I think that marketers, CMOs, other marketing leaders are going to have increased scrutiny, increased pressure to be objective-driven, to actually deliver a result from their investment in artificial intelligence. And it's going to become more and more important for marketers to actually be strategic about what they're doing, both how they're spending money and how they're implementing in their organizations. Whether they're building or buying is almost immaterial, but certainly I think 2024 is going to be the year where marketers have to make that pivot from just pure experimentation, where I think a lot of organizations have gotten stuck, to this more strategic investment in these technologies. I think in the process, we're going to see, frankly, maybe a lot of organizations dial back on what they're doing in artificial intelligence because they're not going to have as free rein to do the kind of things they've done this year that haven't actually borne out or proven themselves in terms of upside, whether upside is productivity or performance. But I think that the ones who kind of stick with it, who are able to make the leap from tactics to strategy, are going to be the brands that actually differentiate themselves in a real and meaningful way, in a sense that hasn't happened yet from what I see in many of the sort of brand marketing applications of AI. Thoughts?
Yeah, it's funny. One of the ones I weighed a trend was similar to this, but not phrased in the same way. Was more that this is the year when some companies really go out with AI and kick some ass, and everybody has to get serious about it. Because if your competitors are suddenly beating the daylights out of you and eating up your market share because they're using AI with their marketing intelligently, it really puts you under the gun to do so as well.
Sure. Right, that's I think the implication. Some will rise up and really sprint ahead, and if you can't make that leap, you're kind of stuck.
You're dead. I mean, you'll be dead in a few years. I do see eventually, and this is to your point. You have to use this stuff strategically now. You can't just goof off with hey, we're creating images on DALL-E and using them in our ads. Gee, we get AI. No, you have to use it to actually dominate your market, and I actually think a lot of that begins with traditional ML and segmentation and understanding your customer.
Absolutely.
Right? And I think I don't want to steal Jeremiah's thunder, but I know we're going to talk some more on this. But the thing is the whole thing about AI is it's going to create literally. You remember the digital divide? There'll be an AI divide. Those that get it and those that don't, and those that don't are going to be in a real struggle. I mean, that's true of professionals, and that's true of companies.
You've stunned Jeremiah into silence.
Well, I mean, it aligns to what I'm going to predict, but I want to hear from Geoff first, and then I'll chime in. So, Greg, directionally agree in all the questions that you're asking and what could happen? Yeah. Geoff.
All right. Sorry. So, here's my prediction. DC, the District of Corruption, is going to teach us to absolutely freaking hate AI. And what I mean by that is it's going to become an election issue. We all love presidential elections so much. And you can see this is already happening with the Biden administration trying to implement AI policy by fiat, and some of the other kind of commentary that's coming out, and all the policies and prognostication. Sorry. I speak English on my better days. But, all jokes aside, we can see that the political wheels are starting to move, and this is becoming a defining issue for technology and business policy moving forward in the economy. And I think the economy is going to be front and center as a political issue in 24. People generally feel that we're in a recession. Economists don't. And there's a conflict there. They're calling it the silent recession now. And there's going to be a lot of questions about how this administration is going to get people out of it, or whoever the Republican candidate is, how they're going to get out of it, and AI is going to be a central theme in that. And it's going to really piss us off, those of us that are in the industry, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting. So many of the roles that it could replace, already we know any repetitive role or task is likely to be automated, but a lot of those now are white-collar jobs too. So it's unclear, like, well, how would the left lean on this versus the right? It impacts both sides in different ways. It doesn't sit on one partisan side of the aisle here.
And I don't know if either side gets it, to be honest with you.
I would doubt, right, that either side gets it, at least not to the extent they need to get it. And they're taking all of their cues from big tech. So, we can EU. Certainly see,
I was going to say the one big policy thing that I could see actually being implemented is because of procurement, where the U.S. government's the largest technology buyer in the country, and insisting on this framework being in place for security concerns with AI on enterprise-grade AI makes sense. But I think that's where it ends,
Yeah, so numerous folks in Silicon Valley do think that the EU regulations put forth are likely to be the ones that cater over to other countries. Therefore, U.S. would likely adopt a big majority of that. So that's interesting.
So we'll see what happens. And of course, all of this is and all of this is right. And all of this is happening, of course, at the same time as we go into that election cycle when we're going to be just like, buried under a tsunami of shit, right? We're going to have all of the deep fakes and the AI-generated content and the misinformation and disinformation, and then you're going to have two, septuagenarian or octogenarian candidates trying to outdo each other in terms of trying to say they have the right approach to, kind of the regulation and implementation of AI, and it's going to be a mess.
Great year to get out of the DC real estate market.
All right, you're
guys.
up.
The
Here
grand
we go.
Finale.
Grand
finale.
finale.
Let's go. Come on.
Make it grand.
I was at the marketing conference. I was one of the speakers called Digital Ascendant in Palo Alto, and one of the speakers was the CMO of Pfizer. And Drew, disclosed to all the marketers in the room that 15% of all content created by marketing in Pfizer is AI generated already. And that's very high. That's extremely high. And everybody in the room was kind of shocked. There was one brand that was like, yeah, we're approaching that path already. But the thing is, most of the brands were like, whoa, that is unbelievable. And the main use case and reason is, to your initial point, Greg and Geoff, doing something, strategy versus tactics, it's to provide personalized content at scale. Personalized emails, personalized ads, personalized web pages. I think that's the direction we're going to see things. So going back to your comment, Geoff, around how traditional AI, which is predictive AI or machine learning, yes, that's going to come back around. And once we understand what people want or who they are, the context, right? Imagine me. I need content for a middle-aged man in Silicon Valley that is catered to me that I'm going to act on. The call to action is going to be very high click-through rate, right? So you got to get really specific to what do I need. And so we'll see that happen. Now, this creates a really interesting permutation. Now, email, it's very clear. You create a single email for those folks. But I could imagine in the end of the next year where we start to see that traditional websites just don't become as important. Instead, we might see a personalized view of a website emerge. So when you land on a corporate web page, somehow it knows the context of who you are and what do you want, and it serves up the content exactly for you. And there may be a chat interface that knows you and is talking to you. It's a very personalized experience. And I can expect to see something like that start to emerge. So that's my take. Websites as we know it, marketing as we know it, bombastic, just dropping content, mass producing content, churning content, that's going to end. It's got to be precision and personalized content.
Very Blade Runner 2049 with those personalized ads,
Yeah, well, yes, that is something. Yes, those are the visions of what could happen. But what do you guys think?
I think it's spot on myself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to me, hyper-personalization is one of the, at present, most powerful use cases. not everybody is well prepared to march down that path yet, right? Because there's still many organizations that struggle with a single customer view, for example. But the ones who truly understand their customers, who are using, analytical engines and using predictive AI effectively against a unified customer view, have an incredibly powerful asset. Now you stack generative AI on top to actually handle the creation, and to me, it's a really powerful 1-2 punch. And I've seen some examples of these kinds of things that have gone to market, like Carvana had a customer loyalty campaign where they produced 1.3 million highly personalized video emails to their existing customers, right? Calling out the person by name, the vehicle they purchased, the day they bought it, where the car was shipped, what was happening in the world that day, like really cool stuff that's highly engaging, that couldn't be done a year ago in any real practical sense. 1.3 million unique implementations of a video message. I mean, it would have been impossible, right? And I think that's only the beginning of the kind of thing, to your point, Jeremiah, just the beginnings of the kinds of things that brands are going to be able to do. And I agree with you, highly personalized web experiences, certainly to one degree or another, an Amazon or a Netflix or a Spotify has been doing that for years, right? But brands are way behind in delivering that kind of experience to consumers. So I think all of this, when it comes together and is used effectively from a strategic perspective, is the future of digital marketing.
Yeah. So the Amazon and the Spotify and the Netflix examples are just serving up the right type of content or products. I think this is more where the entire web
I agree. I think it will be more. Yeah.
Yeah. When the web broke, everybody was talking about one-to-one marketing and how that was going to happen. And I think we all have seen through the years and the iterations that we've gotten tantalizingly closer, and we haven't gotten there. And this to me is a natural fulfillment of that vision and dream, because finally we can scale, right? That's always been the problem with content. Let's not even talk about the problems that human error bring into it, but just human ability to populate enough content on an individual basis. It's just not been economically feasible. Now it is. And so this makes a ton of sense. It's a good use of AI. It's really the complex AI model that we all know is possible, but nobody seems to be talking about.
And what's marketers want this, right?
Yeah.
And consumers 100%. Probably want this too if there's less spam, right?
Right.
Oh, and I'll bet you the number one company that wants it is Salesforce. They want to offer this to all their customers,
Yes, I think that's right.
Yeah, and I think, going back to a theme from earlier in the show, it's also one of those potentially double-edged swords, right? There will be a line beyond which the consumer says, you know what, this is too personal. Right?
Yeah.
But up until that line, it's going to be a tremendous amount of benefit. To your point, Jeremiah, less spam, less irrelevant content. It's going to be nothing but goodness until at some point you might be like, this brand knows me too well. And it's going to be incumbent upon the marketer to understand where those lines are drawn potentially.
I think, though, too, to that extent, riffing off of that, it forces, and we're already seeing this, forces companies to adapt mobility, right? To literally get your mobile phone number, to cookie you, to place you in immersive ad experiences depending on where your location is. I mean, we're seeing more and more natural ties to digital displays, for example.
Sure.
And as that becomes geofencing, the whole 9 yards, look, email is the lazy marketer's way to do it, and that's going to become increasingly true as these filters come up. If you're only email marketing, you're already behind. And I think, I don't know about you guys, but this holiday season, I love marketing, so I notice these things. I just really love it. How many times have you gotten an offer like, dude, we'll give you another 20% if you give us your mobile number?
Right.
Give us your mobile number.
Everybody's doing that now, right?
Yeah. That's why.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we made it through the list. So
Thanks, guys.
999 big predictions for 2024. Jeremiah, for anyone who, I don't know who these people might be, but for anybody who might not know you well enough, what are some good ways for them to find you, connect with you, and become part of your community?
Thank you. I publish a newsletter. I got a blog. I'm on like LinkedIn and Twitter, so there's many ways to find me. And I would love to hear what marketers are working on in AI. I'd love to know.
And for anybody that's in the San Francisco area, why don't you give us a 30-second pitch for Llama Lounge?
Yes, Llama Lounge is an AI event for startups in the space because I invest in AI startups. 10 different startups get to be on the demo floor, and they're humongous events. At our last one in downtown Palo Alto, 400 to 500 people showed up. There was a line down the street.
It's a big room.
The demand is just off the hook, and that's Llama Lounge with 2 L's.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. All right, Geoff, it is time.
See you later, my friends. And thank you for listening. Please punch like, subscribe, tell your friends about it. You can find us on iTunes, YouTube. We really appreciate your time. Spotify, of course. And with that, have a very safe and happy holidays. We're going to see you in 2024.